Salutare, dragilor! Mă bucur foarte mult să vă revăd, adică să mă revedeți. Am o invitată specială astăzi și sunt extrem de bucuroasă și de onorată pentru că ne-a oferit din timpul ei. E vorba despre Maggie Dent, autoarea cărții acesteia, Bibliei mamelor de băieți, pe care știu că mulți dintre voi o apreciați. Am invitat-o pe Maggie să vorbim un pic despre cum ne creștem băieții, dar și despre cum ne creștem fetele, pentru că a scris și o carte despre fete care va apărea în curând, tot la Editura Univers, tot în colecția pe care eu o păstoresc. Conversația va fi în engleză, dar vom adăuga titrări pentru voi. Am multe întrebări pe listă și sper să vă prindă bine. Vă povestesc un pic despre Maggie. Ea este din Australia, este un autor extrem de bine cunoscut și de respectat acolo. Este și educator parental de foarte mulți ani. Domeniile de interes sunt anii copilăriei timpurii, dar și adolescența și anii de după. Găzduiește și un show la o televiziune locală foarte apreciată, are și un podcast, scrie mult, e un om extrem de generos și are un simț al umorului foarte, foarte fain. Gata, without further ado, welcome Maggie and thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much, Diana. I'm really excited for our chat because there's still lots of misunderstandings out there, and we all want to raise all our kids to be happy, healthy, and heard, and also to be whoever they really are.
I agree, and sometimes it's hard because as parents, we are still discovering who we are, and I don't know very well how things are in Australia, but here in Romania, we have difficult legacy with lots of abuse, lack of emotional intelligence. Of course, it's not our parents' fault. It's not our parents' fault. This is the way things were back then, and they did their best. But for most of us, it wasn't enough. And now so many parents are trying to do better, but it's hard because you don't know the way, you don't know who to follow. There are so many voices now. It's confusing. So many books, which one to choose. I think, you should choose this.
Yeah, choose that one.
Yeah. I really like this book because it offered me such a great perspective over my son and my husband, whom I don't always understand. And sometimes they can be so annoying because even if, it's important to talk about equity and equality, and women can do almost all the things men can do and vice versa. But the truth is, girls and boys are different in some aspects, and men and women as well. So my first question to you, Maggie, is and you are a mother of 4 boys, right?
Now men, now dads.
Now men, dads. And the interesting thing is that all your grandchildren are girls, right?
No, I've got 4 girls, but 3 little boys. So I understand them. But it was when those girls arrived, I kept looking at it going, oh, I haven't seen that, because it wasn't my lived experience. So you're right. That kind of, I never thought I'd write a book about little girls, but it really was. And this, going back that step again, is that, we weren't supposed to talk about gender because it's really supposed to be a social construct, like it's just a conditioning, but it's way more deep and complex than that. So if I start back in, I'm actually the 5th of 6 children, and I spent most of my childhood with my dad, who was a farmer. My mum wasn't a maternal mother, so I didn't have that kind of loving mummy girl thing. And it was lucky for me because it helps me to be able to see the world through boys' eyes. And I don't know what you might call it in Romania, a bit like a tomboy. I actually preferred to play with boys. And even today, there are times I get confused with too many female conversations going on at the same time around a dining table. I can do what men do, and that's glaze over, having no idea what's going on. So, and also when I stepped into my classrooms as a high school English teacher, there was such an enormous difference between how the boys in my classrooms and the girls, A, turned up, B, could remember stuff, get organized better. There was just such a difference. I just thought, hang on a minute, I think we should look at this a little more deeply. And that began me before I had all my boys, that I think we're missing something. And for the mums, the reason I wrote Mothering Our Boys was I kept meeting mums of young boys saying they are just annoying. They never listen. They don't sit still, and they don't. And I realized that they weren't understanding that there were some significant, like biological, hormonal, and brain differences that drive quite significantly different behaviors from our little boys to girls. And like, it's not all boys, it's a statistically significant number of our boys. So that's kind of where that one started. And since then, like, it's nearly 5 years, I get stopped everywhere by mums saying thank you. I really didn't like my son. And then I realized, there was only small things I needed to change. And I have this tender-hearted, loving boy, who feels safe with me, because I wasn't safe, because I was just frustrated because she had grown up as a girl without a penis, and that's already a big difference.
It's a game changer, yes.
And I love the very fact that I presume it's the same for you, really. Traditional patriarchy said boys are tough. Boys don't feel, boys don't care, boys, all these rhetorics that it just isn't true. And when I did the research, we actually know that our younger boys, particularly under 3, are actually far more vulnerable than girls. Not only do they, they die in utero at higher rates, they die at birth at higher rates, and they die in the first 12 months of life at higher rates. And we know that there's this weird thing that happens while they're in utero that, slows down their brain development. So that is why our girls turn up cognitively ahead. So when and I presume it's the same with you, we start them all at this age, everyone should be the same. Well, they're not. And of course, then we growl at boys who can't sit still, and they're often needing to move their bodies a lot more to regulate themselves. And yet they get punished for doing what would help them concentrate. And I just, and they get spoken to way more harshly than girls. And then, one example I use, Iona, and I think it's a beaut one for us to hold in our mind. If a little girl falls over in front of most grown-ups, there's this tender, like, oh my goodness, are you all right, sweetheart? We don't assume she's going to cope with that, right? She's obviously weaker. But a boy falls over in the same place, and we immediately go, come on, just get up, right? So my message is, both of those children, if we just recognize, oh my gosh, are you okay? Do you need a grown-up's help right now? We're not sending them those messages that somehow or other you should not feel pain because you're braver and tougher, and you must be weaker and more susceptible. And I have been blessed with a couple of granddaughters who are almost like ninja warriors. Like, they are so strong on monkey bars and things that, it makes my heart sing but then sometimes at a playground, while they're at the top of these things when they're quite young, there are really loving men going, someone needs to get that girl down from there. And I'm looking at them and so back off. But the reason is, again, that conditioning, they're girls, right? Isn't that the domain of boys? No, some girls are quite capable. And the second one is often they look at the size of the girl and go, she's too small. We don't do that to boys. So again, we've got so many of the conditionings we don't even know that we're doing that kind of put our little girls and our little boys into these little boxes that later on can cause us challenge as grown-ups.
I agree. And I think we need to look at facts. And there's plenty of studies in your books. And I recommend as many people read them. For me, it was very useful, especially to read the opinions of grown men talking about the relationship with their mother. That's one thing you don't really have in your life as a woman. Men openly talking about how they feel, how it was with their mothers. Don't therapize me. I don't want to talk about it. Leave me alone with your nonsense. But that's so much value there, because we have no idea. So, yeah.
And also we're wired to use words far more. And we get kind of, when we actually, what it does quite often to boys is floods them. So they actually have difficulty remembering what you were talking about because you've used far too many words. And you just assume they're going to be able to absorb it the same. And then the really big one, which, you know, gosh, their memories are not so good. And it wasn't until the little granddaughters arrived that I realized how early our girls are capable of pausing, pondering, figuring out strategies, working out how they can get their needs met, working out who's the best person to give them what they want. I'd forgotten. I mean, obviously I am a girl, but it was a long time ago. That boys just don't have that capacity. So if they want a biscuit, they go, I want a biscuit. But a girl's going, so should I ask? I might. No, I think dad's more likely to give me one than mum. So I'll go in and ask dad, right? Well, that's a huge difference. And I think it's not because boys are less intelligent. They take a little bit longer to be quite so cognitive, but they're slower to develop language and the processing of, you know, feelings to happenings. And that's a biggie. I saw that in my classrooms where if I ask what has happened in the text that I'm studying, the book I'm studying, the boys are really good at what and maybe even the how. But when I ask what might that character have felt, then there's like quite a big break, because a female can go backwards and forwards between both sides of their brain thanks to the corpus callosum, and our boys can't. So we're sitting there and they're wondering what they think, and then I've gone 5 questions further on, right? So it was a big lesson for me in the classroom, recognizing I need to prepare them and give them time for those things. And so one of the challenges as us as women is when we get upset and our limbic brain fires up, the next center in girls and women to fire up and be ready is the word center, which is why we're so quick to vent or to express something. So in boys and men, it's the limbic brain fires up, and then the body is the next part of the brain to be able to, that fires up to be ready. And quite a lot later is the word center. And that's one of the most frustrating things it is of mothering or teaching little boys if you're a female. And our expectations for them in the moment when they've made a poor choice, and remember, their impulsivity is also linked to their immaturity and the fact that they're just wired to move. They don't go, I wonder if this is a good idea. They just do. And so when we get that and we just change that a little and have different expectations, I think it's safer for them to make those muck up moments and make those poor choices and still feel that we can love them.
You are so right, and I see both the boys in my house acting like when I ask a difficult question, the first thing my son does, he's 9 now, he gets up on his feet on the couch on this tall thing behind me, and he just jumps on it, saying, "I'm thinking," and he's not young anymore. He's 9, but still he does that, and he thinks while he jumps, and then he's high, and then he jumps on the floor, and So you are so right. I find,
and also the excess energy in their body. We know that the testosterone is a hotter hormone, the estrogens are bonding and a caring hormone. So that physicality, it surges at all sorts. 4 is a particularly tricky year. 13 and 14 is a particularly, the surges give them so much energy. And yet we keep on having expectations they can sit exactly the same as a girl who has estrogen. Hello. And I recognized that early in my classrooms. I'd look up and I have 3 boys walking around my room, and I'm saying, hey, so what's happening over there, mate? What are you doing? And they're just walking, miss. So are you going to get something? No, just walking. So I figured if I put some more brain breaks with movement in my classrooms, they wouldn't need to walk around randomly and potentially get into trouble. And the blessing for that, Diana, is no girl goes backwards with some more movement in the classroom, because everyone needs movement. It's great for the brain and great for the body, but we're still punishing our boys for moving when they're trying to regulate themselves, no matter where it is, in the coffee shop, in the restaurant, in the aeroplane, in the classroom. And when we get that understanding and respect it, we can help them, be able to create those moments, or to do it in a way that's not disruptive of others.
I have two questions. I think they're related to this. I have gathered questions also from my community, and this question I got from several moms. So, okay, boys are a bit more competitive, and they feel the need to compete and to have control and autonomy, maybe more than girls. I don't know. Maybe you can tell us. But how do we make sure we set healthy limits without affecting their need to be in charge? Not always, but most of the times maybe. So how do we balance this? I need you to be safe, so I'll have to say no, but at the same time I can see your frustration and your need to challenge my no, and this may drive me crazy, but I will.
Okay, such a good question. Now, the very first thing we have to remember is, how does a boy feel good about themselves? So their self-worth, and it's very similar to men. They set themselves like experiences, opportunities to test themselves. So that's why that competitiveness, or can I climb higher up that tree, or can I build my Lego tower really high? And when they've achieved it, then they give themselves like, I've done good, I feel good. And unfortunately, it's not the same for girls. Often girls give themselves self-worth when they think other girls like what they're doing, like it's really different. Okay, so there are times that, that pushing the boundaries to taking themselves, in a challenging situation. And many of our boys need lots of help. These are our rooster boys, the strong, feisty, fearless, brave boys. They struggle because when they can't succeed at something, and you can see why they get so angry sometimes in our classrooms. And early on, one of the big windows why they sometimes really hate going and transitioning into school is our girls can color in within the lines beautifully, because their fine motor control happens much earlier than boys. They're able to remember stuff. They're able to, write their names. And a boy's sitting there looking, going, well, I can't do that, so I'm not going to have a go at that. Right? I'm not going to bother with that. Why? I can't do it. So therefore they start sabotaging themselves, but also shaming themselves. And shame for boys is often self-shame. So it's a really tricky one in this window. So when we go to, they're on top of that tree and they want to jump off, and they could potentially hurt themselves, or they're on the monkey bars far too high, or they're trying to hit targets that could damage something else or hurt somebody. That conversation in the heat of the moment is, he's already chosen to do that. And our job is just to pause in that moment, unless it's life-threatening, and let that experience happen. And then it's afterwards that we look at that and go, because sometimes the best lesson for those boys is the natural consequence, that I actually hurt myself. And, then we can, once again, in that moment, he's probably going to be going, yeah, but I gave it a go, right? So if you stop him having the go, then he doesn't know if he could have done it, right? And so then you can't, that's obviously something you're going to practice, aren't you? And sometimes we have those conversations, you're not able to achieve it yet, because the persistent stuff is not something a lot of boys are good at. They say, I'm not doing it, can't do it, not having another go. And that's not easy to get through, because if that stays anchored in a little boy, and I still believe this is one of the reasons that we've still got statistically such a significant number of boys who struggle in the school environment compared to girls. It creates a mindset that says, I'm not good enough at school, I'm not smart enough at school, and therefore they play that video in their head. So if we go back to that with mums, every now and then you're just going to have to take what I call white knuckles, keep breathing. And you may, in that moment, It's too late to jump in by saying that might be unsafe and this. We've just got to let those moments happen. You'll tend to find it's mostly those rooster boys. And let's just mention that the world celebrates, and this is traditional patriarchy, we celebrate the muscly man, the big man, the loud man, the winning man, the man that's the champion. And we've missed the other half, who are the sensitive, gentle men who actually don't need to chest bang when they win and when they do. They can equally strive to succeed, but they don't have the need for bravado. And I think, and then somewhere in that sensitive boys, some of them are our musicians, our artists, our carers, our animal lovers, our environmental warriors who are quietly not needing to play rugby or to stand on a stage and say, look at me. And one of my challenges is equal. They are both equally valid as boys and men. And the sooner our world celebrates that, the sooner we're going to also celebrate the girls who are loud and courageous and brave and fearless. And, you know, we've just had the Women's World Cup out here for soccer. And I think it just shifted like boundaries for girls everywhere, because you can't say now run like a girl, because those girls could run. Oh my goodness. I think it was like, I mean, I know it was in Australia, so we saw lots and lots of it, but I actually felt there's this place now that women's sport is respected as it should have been 20 or 30 years ago. And they are drawing crowds the same as men's sport. And isn't that a wonderful moment for everyone?
I agree. I wanted to ask you regarding the things you said earlier, considering that boys do get affected and compare themselves with girls in school. How do we help them? And not only boys, but also girls who are tomboys, because we have girls that prefer to be in the trees rather than in a bank in school. So how do we keep them confident, help them strive? What do we say to them? How do we nourish their self-esteem?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess what we have to say is that gender really, again, doesn't determine our potential or anything, and that every one of us can still struggle in certain ways. And I think the message I want for all parents is that every child will turn up with unique gifts and strengths and with some challenges. Yeah. So if we just keep focusing on the things they struggle with rather than celebrating the things they're naturally good at, then it's like fixing up like a deficit instead of actually focusing on the positive. So when you build the strengths in them, and there's so many different ways of identifying that, and also knowing that in those early years transitioning, that around 8 things tend to even out. You know, there's an evening out around the academics and the, you know, all the rest of it. Our key aspect in amongst all, I really think, is the more securely loved and safe our children feel in their key caregivers and also in their, hopefully in their educators, the more they'll turn up to try and strive. And that brings up that one really big one, that little boys, if they don't feel safe with the teacher or educator they have, then they're in a state of distress and threat. Whereas girls can manipulate around it. They know how to play nice to make it look like they don't need the bond the same as boys. So that's my other challenge to you, is do everything you can to nurture a warm relationship with your son's teacher. You know, even if when they transition in, get a photo with her or him. It's usually guys tend to be a little bit better at it, but there's not many male teachers in our early years. Put it on the fridge and talk to her as though she's a part of the family, so they get to feel she's part of my safe tribe. We know that that can really make a difference in their ability to have a go when they can't colour in the lines, and also recognising that you're not going to use traditional rewards and punishment, because we know that works brilliantly on rats, but it's actually not, it's not terribly effective long term. But our boys get punished more. Many of our little boys get punished and lose recess and lunch because they can't finish tasks, which they're developmentally often unable to do, which to me is just crazy. They often have their names in red on the board because they haven't been able to sit still, or they called out, or they said something funny that was inappropriate, or they, you know what I mean? And it's, those things are shaming, right? That sets our boys up to fail, and they are far more sensitive emotionally than we've ever given them credit for, in two ways. One, they can pick up when, you know, particularly mums, just go things like we sigh, or we roll our eyes because, oh gosh, they're doing it again. They pick that up and it hurts. Whereas, you know, a girl can just, she's probably doing the same to a mother. So it's not really a, do you know what I mean? We're actually, girls are way tougher emotionally than our boys. And I think that's a really important thing to hold closely to us, that sensitivity. We can build that up. The stronger they feel connected to those caregivers, especially when they make poor choices. Remember, they're not being bad. They're not being naughty. They just are wired to make impulsively poor choices as they're growing forward in this window. So it's helping them again. When they muck up, we hold our hearts open, because so often we're being conditioned that that's when you come down hard, and that's when you come down with the punishment, and that will improve the behavior. For most boys, it actually makes them feel terrified and unsafe, and then they shame themselves, and then they're not able to, you know, the beautiful magic of parenting is the more connected and loved they feel, the more likely they will do what we request. Yeah,
exactly.
That's the nature of it, which is kind of counterintuitive to how people have spoken about raising boys. You've got to have the strap out for the boy, or he's never going to turn out okay. When in actual fact, we just raise angry men in their adolescence, very angry, and, you know, often very prone to wanting to cause pain to others.
Exactly. We just pay all this aggressiveness forward, not giving them a chance to even understand themselves and their sons. So it just goes on and on. Another topic related, I think, is how do we teach our boys and girls, because I think it goes in both directions. So we want them to be respectful and caring and not hit or hurt anyone. But at the same time, we want them to be able to protect themselves, to say, no, I don't like what you're doing to me. And maybe there will be situations where there will be aggressed, pushed, hit. How do we teach them to take care of themselves, or even others that are in vulnerable positions? Okay, you must defend your friends or your colleagues, or but without teaching them to, of course, hit or say bad words. But maybe sometimes in this world, in order to get the bully to stop, maybe they should. I don't know. This is unclear to me. Where is this fine line?
Yeah, I think from very early on, in the first few years of life, at different times, we need to be able to model that it's okay for children to put their hands up and say, no, stop, I don't like it. Both girls and boys. No, stop, I don't like it. And we need to really practice it and role play it and do pretend play, because when it becomes automatic, there's a chance it will go forward. I think the second side to that is there is a difference with our little boys, again, with that incredible how boys tend to want to play because they don't always check in for consent. Girls are often checking in whether that looks like you might want to play with me or not, but boys aren't quite so good at that. And often they use physicality for affection. And that one can cause all sorts of issues. So there are times when our boys will jump on another boy or shove a boy over because he really wants to play with him. And in that moment, that is, you know, the teachable moment at a quiet space, probably at bath time on the end of the day. I know you were trying to connect to play, but do you know that could have actually caused him some pain? So if you can try to think, what's another way I can connect? So I like to teach boys that really hard high fives are really great fun. You know, that soft punch on the arm, but we've got to let them know what a soft one is much better than running into them and bowling them over or hitting them in the head. And I have seen a little boy who was 4.5, 5, leaving an early childhood setting in Australia, and he ran up to say goodbye to his best friend, and he got a bit tangled up, and hit him in the head. And so I think we teach our boys particularly welcoming and farewelling strategies that are still physical, that actually don't cause pain. And then the other side to it, when they do cause pain, we have the quiet chat around what do we do to make that right? Because I know you didn't mean it. However, that has caused someone else. And I have the 3 rules: try not to hurt yourself, try not to hurt anyone else, and try not to damage the world around you, because unintentionally they do it a lot, let's be honest. But I think I have that process around when they muck up, because sometimes our little boys, whether it's around, we know when they're younger, they're not very good at sharing, and they're not very good at, wanting someone to touch their, all of those things are completely normal responses for children under 3 or 4. However, that window from 4 to 6 is a really key window, I think, where we do a lot more of this teaching. I think we try too early, to go, no child understands sharing properly from a core place of, okay, I can share my thing.
I agree. Yes.
It's too early, right? It's almost like, tell me how you feel. I don't know. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
But 4 to 6 is a great window. And I still say we do it through play. We do it through role play, pretend play. Anything we're doing through play will often give them opportunities to explore these things without it being a teaching lesson. Because as soon as mum or dad turn up with a lesson, we're less likely, because we think we've done something wrong, so we don't listen as much. So that's my other key window in that. And can we go to the consent bit, because this is where it does start. That, and I think it's hard for sometimes even grown-ups not to want to swoop in and kiss their beautiful grandchildren without reading their body. What is your body telling you? And I think this is that whole thing of, as we're moving forward, your body is actually telling you very important messages. And our early warning system is not something we want to override. And every now and then we say that to a boy, just before he climbs that tree, remember, how does your body feel? Is it feeling okay, or is it feeling a bit funny and wobbly? Where does your body show its fear and anxiety? Because that is really important. Because you might be near an unsafe person and you're about to do an unsafe thing, or you're in an unsafe place. So the body will try to tell you those things. And I would really be encouraging that, to then go, okay, so I'm going to take a risk by choice. I still feel a bit wobbly, but I still want to have a go. Yeah. And I think it's that same place around our children, and we've had conversations that we used to do a lot around stranger danger. And unfortunately, it's not very helpful, because some of the, 3/4 of the strangers that your children know are probably safe. 90% are more likely to be a family member or someone you know. But we need to use the word tricky. So tricky people make your tummy feel a bit funny, and we need to listen to that. Yep. And then the consent bit over the top is, if I'm not feeling comfortable, then it's no. And no, I love it when I see young children put their hands up and go, no, I don't like it. I'm not coming. So I think they're all the important messages we start, but we can't start too early because it's just too young. Damn.
I agree. Okay. What do you think about the effect of social media over our boys? I'm thinking at the fact that they don't spend as much time outside playing unsupervised, making their own choices, getting the consequences for that, fighting, running. So they are playing, but online, maybe with friends, but they are just sitting on the couch and just using their thumbs like this. But also the perfect image of the boys and girls, mostly girls, that are online. What does that do to their development and their relationships, and how can we help?
Yeah. All right. So, the biggest message around the technology world, because it's not all bad, is the fact that as little as possible in the first 5 years, because they're developing their whole sense of self through using all of their senses in the real world with real experiences. So the displacement effect we're witnessing here are teachers of 5-year-olds telling me we have children with poorer gross and fine motor control because you don't develop a grip by tapping and swiping. So a second one is they're turning up with less less oral vocab because we're not being marinated in language the same way. The third one is they're much more likely to struggle with self-regulation. Their big feelings flood them more often because you don't do that online. It's just a screen. And the fourth one is an inability to initiate and sustain play. Now, all of those can be cured by making sure we limit it in the early years. And as we move on, the latest research coming out is the later that your child gets a smartphone and access to the World Wide Web 24/7, the more chance they'll grow to be healthier mentally, emotionally, and physically and cognitively. And it's a big challenge. You know, we can get them smartphones dumb phones versus smartphones where all they can do is you can text or you can call. I think one we're also now knowing is the impact of our gaming for boys. They're just doing what they're biologically wired to do in the real world. However, they're not experiencing it with real humans. So we've got a huge number of our boys with social anxiety, not being able to come out, not wanting to participate even in team sports as much because it's just such a comfortable space, right? And they're in control and they're getting great big hits of dopamine. So we've got to be able to allow them some for the fun of it because seriously, it's not all bad, but we've got to really monitor because it slips straight. It can go into really problematic addictions quite quickly. Now, the girls are spending far more time online, and we absolutely know that the increase in body image issues, body dysmorphia issues, chronic anxiety, being trolled and bullied is excessively, amazingly impacting our girls from anywhere from 12 onwards. And to be really honest, that worries me more than anything because our girls are so deeply emotional. And it's a big window. I didn't like myself and I didn't even have a screen. Like I didn't even have a TV and I didn't even get magazines and I still struggled with finding a way to like who I was. And it's so hard for parents to support them in that space because they're biologically wired to want to connect. So it's giving them a connection, but it's not always a connection that's authentic. So my message to families is that you have to be the person who not only supports them and helps keep them safe online, we got to teach them how to be respectable, responsible citizens online. And it's very similar to, does that make me feel uncomfortable? Is that not okay? And then the other biggie is the fact that our kids are being marinated in things that children should never see. The pornography that our children can access for free is far more harsh and cruel and degrading than anything that used to be available. And then they're also able to witness really awful stuff like beheadings and, suicides in live time. No child should see that. So what we're doing is we're really kind of stealing away a pathway for an optimistic and hopeful future where when you see that stuff, when you're highly impressionable without a mature executive brain, you are deeply impacted by these things. And I know a lot of teens, I've just done another survey with teens, they are worried. They're very disillusioned with the world that us grown-ups are giving them. Not only are they concerned about climate control, they're just concerned that we've got so much nastiness in our world because you can see so much more of it. And that's what the World Wide Web gives them access to. And that, it's sad, but we really, as I said before, the gifts it brings into us is more for when we're older and we can navigate it and we can, all of us struggle with having, it's permanently pulling at us, this incredible digit. And I want to bat for all the parents out there who, are doing their best because that smartphone means that you're taking your work home with you as well. You check up on stuff because you want to make sure you're doing the right thing. It's not left at work anymore. So that steals your time. The second thing is sometimes just being a parent organizing lunches at school or a dental appointment or when is the netball game or the soccer game means you're on 5 or 6 different apps and then the school sends you a million messages. Like you have to almost be on your phone for an hour a day just to navigate what the heck's going on in your children's lives. That's an hour that you don't have with your children, chatting to them, singing with them, playing with them. So it's kind of, it's a bit of a worry. I mean, we're all worried and we're all doing the best we can, but it just is a nightmare for parents.
Yeah, it's complicated, and I think no one knows the true impact. I think we'll see it in 10 or 20 years. I already see the rates of anxiety and depression and suicide rate going up, and the pandemic did so much in terms of relations and dependency and addiction to screens. And we'll see. But I agree, we have to introduce screens to them as late as we can, and then be in control and set limits. And what works for us is a contract that we sign together. These are the times per day that you have, and this is what happens if you don't. If you want to take more, you will have less tomorrow, and that we are always there. Let's talk about this. Do you want to see? Are you curious? What did you see there? I'm here. I will not be upset. I will not punish. I will not take the phone out of your hand. I know this. I have this impulse when they go over, they cross the line. I just want to go there and like rip it off.
Take it off them.
But then I think I like to do that, and I always spend more time than I know that I should. And if someone took my phone, I would just probably bite them, because hey, I'm a human being and I have this need. Please just give me 5 more minutes, or let's just be friendly.
I think the big one too is sleep. You know that we really got to make sure that becomes a priority in homes, because we're noticing the rapid blue lights messes with melatonin. If the kid's not outside with the sunlight, the melatonin level doesn't work as well. So the less sleep they get, the more poor choices they make. More choices everyone is, the harder it is to learn at school, and they're going to be grumpier. So if there's one focus, it is that there's a time in every house where the Wi-Fi is completely off and absolutely no one, including parents, can access it, so that there is an opportunity we might hang around and have a hot chocolate before we head off to bed, but nobody can access it and everyone gets a decent night's sleep. I think that's a big step in that direction, because it's not saying you can't access it, so you've got to get your homework done and you can catch up. But this is the time in our house we're going to bed.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good idea, actually. We'll try it. I will let you know how it works. Maggie, I still have 2 questions.
Go for it.
Hopefully it's not too much of your time, since I was late to this recording. I should let the public know, and I apologize again for that. But 2 more, and then I will let you go out with your family. Thank you so much. So the question is, do you feel like it's harder to parent these days than it was when you were a kid, for example?
Oh, heavens, yes. And there's a whole lot of reasons, but some of the ones is that almost there's too much information. So therefore parents flounder around thinking there must be something I'm doing wrong, when in actual fact, developmentally, toddlers have always been difficult. They often have meltdowns. They often don't sleep. All of the things that we've ever seen before, we think we can fix it rather than embrace it as being a part of early childhood development. The second one too is the pressure on parents to somehow or other be perfect. I don't know whether that's just because of Instagram and everything else, but it seems you can't have, children who are poorly dressed or muddy or with no shoes, just like, So the judgment, particularly on mums, is really tricky. I think we're time poor. I mentioned how our work comes home with this. I think today's parents are far more time poor, and yet they often put more stuff on the plate to do than previous generations. Like the overscheduled childhood is a very real thing. And so sometimes I say less can be more. And I also believe that we are marinated in a world where we get all the world's disasters fed into our homes instantly, whereas in the past we didn't. So we're all in a heightened state of anxiety about our safety and our children's safety. And I think we're stealing childhood, in lots of ways. We're in a hurry to get them smart. We want them at school. Everything's a preparation for school. And I just would love kids to be kids. Let them just be children, because that's actually what we did in previous generations. We weren't hurrying them up to get to be smart. We recognize our children are more than a brain on a seat. They're a mind, a body, a heart, and a soul. And we were giving the whole child an opportunity to find out and discover who they were in an environment where they were able to play to their heart's content.
Yeah, and I think also another problem is that the families are more insular, so you don't have your aunts and grandparents around. So it's just you and your husband and your 2 or 3 kids, and you have to take care of everything. And there's no one to say, okay, give me the kids, you go relax, go out with your son, with your man, and you just have to, juggle with everything. And it is complicated. Thank you, Maggie. The last one is especially for my community. It's like 100,000 parents who are trying to break the cycle. So most of them were raised with punishments, both physical and emotional, conditioning, no emotional education whatsoever, low self-esteem. Yet we are trying to do better, to change things. We are trying to understand our kids. We read lots of books. We go to events. We try to get in touch with our feelings. We go to therapy. Sometimes it's so hard because we are wired, and it's very hard to change our pilot. That's just, when the limbic system fires up, you just do what you received. So it's hard. So my question is, what would you say to a parent who was raised this way, who tries but often fails and is discouraged and is judged, because still the majority of parents in Romania hit their kids as an education strategy. So it's not just because I'm angry, but I will hit you because I know that this is the way you will grow up to be responsible and good. So I will just do that. So it's hard to be like part of a minority and being judged all the time and say, you are raising monsters, they will not listen to you. And you get confused, and you're not sure of yourself, and you feel more guilty. And then it's this vicious cycle that it's hard to get out of. How would you encourage these parents that they are on the right path?
Oh, heavens, yes. And it's exactly what, the science of child development is so incredibly strong. And I know I suggested it before, that the more connected and loved a child feels, the more likely they're going to follow your guidance. And there's a difference between punishment, which is where I hurt children and I cause pain and I create fear to change behavior. No, you don't. You actually just hurt them. Because what our job is to discipline, which is about teaching and guiding our children that there is right and wrong, and in our home there will be, there are times that I'm going to say no very loudly, and there are times that you're not going to like the boundary. But my job is to raise you to be a person who understands the difference. And I think it's that I want parents to know there are times you just need to be the parent, not the best friend of your child. That there are times every child will feel, oh my gosh, what a horrible mum or dad you are, right? I'm going to say if they do that, you're probably doing your job really well, right? Because I meet children who've never had no, and they really struggle in school. So again, our job is to be, that firm, fair as often as we can, and warm. And so my suggestion just simply is that we step up with our absolute parent voice on it. That needs to stop right now. But what I'm not going to do now is continue shouting at you and lecture you. Or what I'm going to say right now is, how about we go outside for a while? Let's go chase the dog. Or I might give you a really firm talking to about the language I heard coming out of the bedroom while you were playing a gaming with your friends. And I want that to stop, because that's not acceptable in our home, right? And we pause. Do you want to come out and have some ice cream? So what I'm doing is I'm delivering the message with great power and poise and strength, but I'm not going to continue. I'm going to return to warmth, and that is the balance. It is so powerful. And there is enormous power in kindness in your parenting. So again, it is that message, and you will muck up. We all did. We all will. But every now and then I get up tomorrow and I'm going to have another go. And then I want you to ponder as you fall asleep. When I was a little kid, what was the sort of mum or dad did I want? Can I be the parent I yearned for when I was a little child? What would that look like? Let me be that.
Thank you, Maggie. I'm so happy that your voice is heard in Romania as well. I think we need more gentle and firm leading.
Yeah, it's both.
Like yours.
It is both, and we can do both. Yeah, and like I said, if you've got time for some therapy, absolutely go for it, because it's just stories we tell ourselves, and those stories probably aren't valid anyway. But
yeah,
we want to raise the next generation to hopefully have a capacity to know they're loved even when they muck up, and especially our little boys.
Yeah.
So thank you, Iona.
It was an honor for me. I hope we will be in touch. We are looking forward for your following titles. Please keep writing and speaking about this. We need this. We need you. My respects. Thank you for your time. And
my pleasure.
I think the world is a better place thanks to you too. Maybe we'll see each other again if you have the time.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye. Best wishes.
Bye.